we have a bit of time to spend together. But first of all, dear Minister, dear President, dear Director, and ladies and gentlemen and colleagues, thank you so very much for this invitation. It came quite unexpected. One day I get an email from Christopher, and I think it's the usual business. You know, maybe we have to do this, maybe working on a paper together. I said, no, you have to come to Munich. We want you to participate in the inauguration of the Institute. And so what's the feeling of the philosopher in Oxford when you get the invitation? Pleasure, satisfaction, great of course, recognition for the achievement, and yet, deep down, that pinch of envy. That, as an ethicist, I know very well. I mean, I teach this stuff, so I say, what exactly? And they said, envy because of Facebook. No, of course not. And we work a lot with Facebook. There you are. I said, so not exactly. So I started scratching what that pinch of envy was about, and I thought, I know what it is. It's not for what has been done, and it's not for the funding and stuff and so on, but it's for three things that I realize even better today. The agility, the foresight, and the multidisciplinarity that this institute represents. That is very much a matter of envy anywhere, because we preach agility, multidisciplinarity, and foresight anytime, everywhere, at every level, and yet practicing it, as we just saw, that is a matter of envy. So having come to terms with my pinch of envy, I decided, yes, of course, I'll be delighted, and here I am. And so this lecture will be pretty much high level, because Christopher reminded me that, please, let's try to avoid being boring if you can. So don't try to give one of those narrow, specific, 10 people only will be interested in kind of paper, but more for a general audience that might want to hear about a couple of things that are of broader interest. And so the multidisciplinarity, the foresight, the agility, it's a high bar, and if I fail to jump that high, at least you know that there's a Kantian regulative ideal towards which I'm moving. So hopefully, in failing to get there, something will be achieved. So challenges and opportunities. I like to stress challenges, not problems, not difficulties, not tragedies. One thing that you will not hear from me in the next 55 or so minutes, as I've been told that we have, is scaremongering stuff. Not because I don't like to sell books or I don't like to be on the headlines. I love that. But again, ethics teaches you to be serious about what needs to be taken seriously. And so there are plenty of books and plenty of movies and plenty of newspapers that will keep talking about the next, whatever, 50, 100 years from now to what's going to happen. It is not going to happen. The future of AI is deadly banal, boring. It will be like electricity. No one gets excited today when you turn on the light, do you? No. It was exciting a long time ago. You don't get excited getting into a car. It was magic years ago. Future generations will look at AI and said, what was that problem? So the future of AI is, shall we say, boring, but between excitement and boredom, that's our task, to make sure that it will be boring, that it will be just trivial, just something that facilitates our life, makes our life a little bit better, hopefully doesn't generate too many problems, exactly like many amazing technologies we have had in the past. We're still taking advantage of the wheel. I'm sure AI has a long, long way to go. But as I said, more in terms of real challenges and real opportunities. So what is the talk for today? This map will appear again. I shall try to convince you. You don't have to agree with me, but at least you know where you disagree if you don't agree with me. That AI is a divorce. It's not a marriage. It's not a marriage between amazing engineering abilities on the one hand and biological intelligence on the other. And we put them together and wow, we have a problem. No, it's a divorce between the ability to solve a problem in view of a goal successfully, and any need to be intelligent in doing so. That's why your iPhone plays chess better than anyone else in this room at zero intelligence. The intelligence on my grandmother's fridge, as I keep saying to anyone who wants to listen. AI will succeed precisely there where that divorce will be successful. So AI is a divorce. then the ethical problems that this divorce generates. Because as we heard before, if he were intelligent, which is not, no, but if he were, well, I think we should be more relaxed. I don't quite get it. I'm saying, it's intelligence and I'm so worried. So look, precisely because it's intelligent, as if we could teach it, we could train it, we could build it better, it will understand. So you had to be particularly involved in science fiction to think that not only is intelligent, but it's an evil intelligence. It starts immediately sounding like some kind of biblical moments where, but the problem is it is not intelligent. There is nothing intelligence there, and therefore this divorce is where problems are. Who has ever complained about a happy marriage? But when you have an unpleasant, difficult divorce, that's where the problems arise. And so AI generates a lot of challenges. Some of the challenges which I will summarize, hopefully, in a way that is of interest, at least some of them for any in the room, and a conclusion to see how this challenge can lead to potentially some real opportunities that we should be able to grab. One reminder before we start doing some real work. We are the last living generation that has ever seen a world that was fully analog. In fact, some people here, not many, I have to say, but some people here have not. They have no idea what the world was like when there was no internet, no web, no Amazon, no Google, no Facebook, no nothing. When you had to make a telephone call with a token or a card or a coin, but there was no mobile phone. There were TV in black and white, and so on. That world, which you can tell, 1964, is going, and is quickly going. At some point, future generations will be such that no one in this room, let's make it 200 years so everybody feels relaxed, but in 200 years, none of here is alive, okay? Well, we know that. I know it's bad news, but... And so when we will all be dead, the people in this room will have a historical understanding only of a purely analog world. So it is up to the generation that have seen the two sides of the river, has left the one bank, is crossing the river, is getting to the other bank of the river, to make sure that we land on the right side of the river. Once we are there, the new digital, or as I like to call it, on-life, infosphere, lots of terminology to describe this hybrid world, will have been built. Those foundations are up to this generation. The pressure we feel is that there is no time. The last generations that had such an important task had millennia during the agricultural revolution or centuries during the industrial revolution. We have decades. Well, welcome to the short stick, as it were, of history. We were born at this time, and it's exciting, but at the same time, the pressure is natural to be felt. There is not much time because this revolution is happening very quickly, faster than anything else that has happened in the past. Now, let's talk about this thing, about AI. Now, so AI is a divorce. Anyone and his uncle these days knows that ethics and AI, digital ethics, is the business. For, again, people in the business, so we've been talking about this for about 30 years, but it's amazing that finally someone, even Gartner, picks up this thing. It is extraordinary that the picking up is so insightful. So I already said enough, and if I say any more kind words, Christoph is going to be suspicious. So as he knows that I'm not a nice guy. So I'll stop here, but it is remarkable. This institute is a step forward, is quite a novelty internationally, and so there is a lot of pressure to see how you guys are going to do it. And any good lessons, we're ready to copy. We've been getting here very quickly. I'm going to give you just a couple of points, but these are trivial. This stuff that you read every day on the newspaper. So I know that you know, just to warm up, something like what are we talking about when we talk about AI? We're talking about everyday things that we use ordinarily. Netflix, Amazon, the kitchen, or say speech recognition. I remember a time when I had to order tickets by phone. That was the only way in a cinema in Oxford. And the bloody place was called in something called George Street. And unless you went George Street, the telephone did not get it. So it was always, Kia, my wife, can you please tell this machine that is George Street and not the other cinemas, you know? And she would tell the thing to George Street. So, these days, George Street, it gets everything easily. So you can tell that voice recognition has been made in step forwards that are unimaginable today, that has passed sort of human recognition at the same time. Intelligence, let me remind you, 0. Nada. Not a goldfish, okay? Yet, infinitely superior to anyone in this room. That's fine. And we've been talking to these gadgets increasingly. Cortana, Siri, Alexa, Google Now, you name it. And why do we talk so much to these things? Because we don't write and we don't read anymore, or not that much. We have 6 billion people in the UK who are hardly able to summarize a newspaper, and I'm not talking about the Times, I'm talking about the tabloid, and repeat what was in that newspaper. And then you wonder about Brexit. Of course, I mean, it's easy. I mean, an ignorant population votes as an ignorant population should vote, with the guts, and I'm being generous about biology, rather than with the brain. So that's why we have gadgets everywhere that which you can talk. Now, mind for another day, in a different context, what happens to advertisement when you speak as opposed to watch is a different world. But we've been there in the past. There was a past when advertisement was on the radio. And so the flow of time, not synchronic, but diachronic, there are lessons to be learned there, but maybe for another time, when we'll see each other in Brussels, probably. So there's a lot of AI out there, and this is a quick map that a colleague of mine, Korea, or rather Korea, he's an Italian guy, has kindly allowed me to show you. We are in the red corner. All you need to remember is that it's an archipelago, and there's an old story, the symbolic one, and the new story, the more distributed one, and the new one is doing things that the old one wasn't quite able to do. Above all, learning from massive amount of data and outputting from this massive amount of data valuable information. It's a mapping exercise. Now, how much excited can you get on mapping? Very much or not at all. So, very much, because a lot of the things we do is a matter of mapping. From traveling to logistics, from saving from the energy, Google using DeepMind now to save 30% of their consumption of energy and recycling, all the way to perhaps understanding a text or reading a radiography. That's all mapping for you. Fantastic. Next time you meet a friend and that friend is not quite upset, is quite upset, and you don't want to tell him, that's no mapping there. That's human intelligence. It's semantics, understanding, insightful, relevance. It's got nothing to do with mapping. Wrong tools for the wrong job. Let's not keep emphasizing the mapping exercise. If we do that, the winter will be brutal. Because remember, we are now in the season of how wonderful AI is, but the winter is coming. As for all technologies, all hype, all overblown expectations, one day someone will say, I was expecting a panacea here, and all it does is recognizing cats. So yes, and that's magic for you. We can do a lot with recognizing cats, if it's a tumor in the brain, for example. So it's a big world out there, but I told you I like to emphasize this divorce idea. The divorce is quite simple. The idea is that you have forms of problem solving or agency on the one hand, parking a car, playing chess, finding the cheapest ticket online, on and on, reading a radiography. That's a problem. You need some kind of agency to solve the problem. The amazing thing that has happened now is that we have the technology to do it, and to do it increasingly well. Not only, the sky is the limit. It's up to us to understand where that divorce can be deployed to make sure that that problem can be solved by a technology that has, I remind you, the intelligence of this microphone, 0. And so we need to be careful. This is also brittle, doesn't scale well. The same robot that cuts the grass will not clean the carpet. It will not stand up and run away with your credit card. End of the story. But we can detach gardening, we can detach dishwashing, we can detach on and on. This detachment of intelligence from agency, to me, is the real revolution. We've never been here before. Last time we had something vaguely similar was when we had slaves around. And it wasn't a detaching. We simply suppress the humanity of that machine to work only with the agency brutally. If you read the description of a slave in Aristotle, you replace the word slave, you input the word robot, and it's identical. So the only form of agency we had in the past, of intelligent kind, problem-solving, was ours, and therefore we exploited in the most violent, disgusting, revolting way that you can possibly imagine. well done, humanity. Now we have something slightly better, and anyone talking about human rights and robots should stop reading so much science fiction. It can really harm your brain. No. Why on earth? Because the objection immediately said, look, if it is so stupid, if it is a divorce, how come that it works so well? It is not quite right, is it? Well, that's another turning point that I would like to at least have with you discuss. Again, you don't have to agree with me, but just that little sort of pinch back in that neuron in the brain that says, oh, maybe I heard this before. We are not building artifacts that can cope with the world. We're changing the world to make sure that they can cope with it. So next time you go to the supermarket and something asks you to do this and this and that, because that way, that machine will be able to scan that tin of beans. You know who is adapting to whom, which environment has been completely re-engineered to make sure that the machine acts successfully. In this world, you can probably see top left, there is a little square with a human being there. It's not meant for a human being. This could be any company around the corner. I suspect it might be Audi, but it could be any sort of car maker in Germany. I've been to the Audi place, and it's majestic. Stories of building, 4 or 5 stories high, with robots bigger than this room, maneuvering cars as if they were listening to Bach. There's this car that navigates beautifully, elegantly, gently, and you shouldn't be in their space. Their space is not for us, it's for them. We are, as the engineers will say in this room, building the envelope. An envelope is in mechanical engineering, is the 3D space within which a robot can operate successfully. We are enveloping the world around the machines we have. And of course, we have increasingly lower cost, more computation, more data, better machine learning. Absolutely. No, we are making lots of progress. Better algorithms, more Internet of Things. And we live increasingly on life in this sort of hybrid space where more and more time is spent within a digital world where we scuba dive. But the real sort of, as in locals, the real natives are digital things made of digital stuff, eating and consuming digital stuff all the time. So inevitably, it's not our world. They do better, infinitely better, things that we're not cut for. All fine, and please do not go out of this room and say, oh, there's a limit to robots and machine learning as that can do. No, there isn't. If you are getting that idea, I'm not making myself clear. It's just a different road. And to explain that, hopefully this will be clear enough. So imagine you have, for the computer scientists, I'm talking about real computational resources, real complexity, not as in very difficult, no, as in complex in terms of resources, which normally means time and space, which for computer scientists translates into steps, how many steps it takes to process that particular problem, and space, meaning memory. Suppose you have computational resources going from simple to complex. The more steps, the more time you need, the more space, the more memory you need, the worse the problem gets. So 0 to 1. Then you have skills. Skills go from easy to difficult. And here are, for example, turn the light on. How many kids are annoying in a room? Stop it. So elementary, So it's very easy. A kid can do it, a 5 years old. And in terms of resources, it's one step. Click. So computationally, very simple. Tie your shoes. I hope you still remember that. I remember my mom teaching me. And I wasn't quite good, I have to say. So it took a long while to be able to tie my own shoes. So in terms of skills, it's quite difficult. It's so difficult that, in fact, I can't remember what is the CEO of Adidas or Nike, one of the two, Google to correct me, said recently that if you find the shoes with the laces tied properly when you buy them, a human being has done that. We don't have a robot that can put the laces through the shoes. It's skill-wise, a very difficult task. But then you have dishwashing. Well, dishwashing increases in complexity, so to speak. The computer scientist should stop listening, please. No, I know, but it's oversimplifying, but it's not so far from the truth. The more dishes you have, the more complex the task is, and it takes more time. Oversimplification, I know, NP complete, etc. I know, but pass me, please. Then you have iron shirts. Well, that is both difficult, because you need to know what you're doing. As my wife says, even a philosopher can do the dishes, but it takes a neuroscientist, meaning hair, to iron the shirts. But in this case, it's both complex and difficult. So what are we doing with AI? And all this to say something very simple. We transform the difficult into complex. That's where the divorce happens. If you can transform something that is incredibly difficult into something that is immensely complex, where AI eats complexity for breakfast, it doesn't matter. No, oh, this gazillions of data for fractions of a second. Done. It's the shoelace. I'm sorry, that's not way. But it takes a second to any kid. I know, that's a different world. So how can we translate difficult into complex? Well, sometimes we think that that's the way. Here is the ironing shirt. Didn't I say that this was difficult? Not for the robot. In fact, look at this. The poor thing, it's in Madrid. Colleagues have built this, and I guess we don't have to hear the little song. It's going to stop soon. This robot, it's as big as I am. It's about 1.8. It takes a whole room. It doesn't take the shirt, and it doesn't put the shirt away. You have to put the shirt there, and you have to remove the shirt when it's done. But having said that, it seems to be extraordinary. Now, for someone, and I know some people think this is the future. No, it is not. No, it isn't. What do you mean? Because did you hear what I said? Divorce, re-engineer the world so that the divorce will be successful. That is the future. This is a prototype, will go nowhere. I put my money on this particular table. I'll see you in 5 years. So not 50, because that's too easy. Or 500, as most of my colleagues who know foresight. So, oh yeah, in the next millennium. Oh, that's too easy. No, 5 years from now on. Let's meet it again, and I'll tell you, will not go anywhere. Is it the same robot that is going to get out and drive my Audi? I don't know, Volkswagen, I have to say. Up, yeah, I know, philosopher. But is it the same? No, of course not. That's Star Wars. No, look at no, the robot comes and drives. That's not the future. We are re-engineering the car so that there is no wheel, there is no gear. And the world will be made of roads that are good for the robot. So what is the future? This is the future. And this you can actually buy it already. It's a few $1,000s. Look what they have done. They built a whole environment around a very complex process done by the robot. And it does the same job. This is simply ironing the stuff. This you can buy it right away. And I would like to have it for Christmas. So just in case we're recording this. Yeah, so do you see the difference here? How we are obsessed with anthropocentric, we projected like us. Maybe, but I wouldn't put Facebook money on this. I'd rather put Facebook money on this thing. This will be something that you can put in a room that thousands, perhaps hundreds of thousands of people will be able to buy and have a different life. And whereas the other one can actually chop your head if you're not careful, this one doesn't. So that's the divorce. So what kind of problems this divorce can generate? Remember, agency, intelligence requires a counterbalance, re-engineering the world around these things. So these are the two elements. If you separate and at the same time re-engineer so that divorce makes for success, what kind of challenges do we have? Plenty of ethical dilemma. I'm going to summarize them in one slide and then I'll give you a little bit more concrete information. But AI could be used for amazing opportunities. The list is there. Is sufficiently readable for anyone, even at the end of the room, very quickly. It could enable our self-realization, make us slightly better human beings. There is a long way to go, so plenty of improvement available for as far as human beings are concerned. It could enhance human agency enormously. For a long time, I can't remember how many times we'll be talking about AI as augmented intelligence, and every now and then you go to a conference and someone brilliant who never read a single thing says, oh, but it could be augmented intelligence. I know, we've been talking about that for half a century, so just read Wikipedia. It could do that. Are we doing it? Maybe, maybe not. But remember, that's augmented human agency. It could increase our societal capabilities. It could actually help us to get together, coordination, efficiency, less consumption, a better interaction with the world, and it could cultivate societal cohesion. Oh, definitely. These are not known as green points because what we normally know are the other side, the red side. And mind that there is AI that is either overuse or misuse, devaluing human skills, the other side of self-realization, removing human responsibility, the other side of enhancing human agency. Reducing human control, the opposite of social capabilities. Or eroding human self-determination, exactly what we don't want to have when it comes to societal cohesion and self-fulfillment. The red bit, very dangerous. People who have been sufficiently careful normally stop here. But there is something missing, as you can tell from the white space. And because I'm from the other passport, the second passport, the British passport, amber is a great important bit in the UK that needs to be negotiated. And the amber bit is opportunity cost. For the economists here, they know exactly, I'm using that in a sort of technical term. The opportunity cost of not doing anything or underusing. So you use it properly, overuse it, misuse it, or don't use it when you should. Now remember that in this context, for social reasons, in the medical context, the major problem we have at the moment is precisely opportunity cost. At least at the NHS, the National Health Service in the UK, one of the largest providers of jobs in the world, I'm told after Walmart and the Chinese army, we've got something like 1 million plus people working for the NHS, and yet we're not using enough AI. And that's human suffering that is not being decreased for lack of a clear understanding of what's the right thing to do or not. Basically, it's fear. Rather not, because if I do something right, no one will say thank you. And if I do something wrong, I'll go on the cross. What's the deal here? Better safe than sorry. And so we're not doing it. And that's why I hope that initiatives like the Institute will push for the amber as well. Not just avoid the red, but the amber. At this point, say, okay, how do we do this? How do we put it all together? Because it's easy, so how that it works, the re-engineering, the space that gets adapted. Okay, maybe the map, fine, but this is all ethics. And ethics, we've been disagreeing on ethics since day one. Yes and no. So here, I hope you will remember this. You go to a conference, and there are people, specialists, who says ethics are. And there are only two alternatives, each of which is embarrassing. They don't know English, or normally don't know ethics. Ethics in English is singular, like mathematics. It's an unfortunate, stupid way of spelling a word. Yeah, I know, I learned English the hard way. Why putting an S when S normally means plural? I don't know, but ethics, mathematics is. Now, that little joke linguistically is to remind everybody here that we have a single ethical way of thinking. Lots of disagreement. It does not matter. In the long run, what we are seeing is convergence around points that more or less everybody, yes, no, but we tend to agree. Normally people get confused about not what we think is right, but how and why we think is right. So the Kantian and the utilitarianist, the religious person and man, they all are convinced that, say, child pornography is wrong, but they disagree enormously about why it's wrong. So that's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about agreeing on the fundamental principles and, of course, leaving plenty of room for disagreement or why exactly that is the case. Now, I don't want to oversimplify. 25th century of history of ethics remind us that there is a lot of work to be done. But when I say that we are agreeing, that's what I mean. Factually converging around stuff. So these are the most recent major frameworks for ethical thinking around AI. We started some time ago with the House of Lords AI sort of committee, and they're more or less in chronological order. The work that we did together, with Christoph, with Ugo, and other members for a think tank in Brussels in collaboration with the European Commission called AI for People. From AI for People onwards, and I have to say, shall I say it, that essentially it was thanks to our work that the high-level group of experts on AI and ethics at the European Commission picked up those 5 fundamental principles. And because it was the high-level group, and we published, I'm also a member there, not such a long time ago, it was less than a year, then the OECD picked up the same principles and more or less converged on the same ideas. And then the Beijing AI principle came up and said, you know what, well, we quite kind of agree. Kind is the only missing bit, if you can tell. And the missing bit there is autonomy, not accidentally, of course, shall we say. But do we want to really concentrate on the drop of water missing in the full glass, or how much water there is? There's a lot of convergence, there's a lot of agreement. And if anyone is still skeptical here, just one more example. 17 SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals, approved by the UN. If anyone disagrees, it's their problem. As the best maneuver you can ever have in ethics, I don't have to convince you, you have to convince me that I'm wrong. So 17 goals of Sustainable Development Goals at the UN level. Well, we just launched literally in New York at the UN General Assembly. I went and I launched the Oxford Initiative on AI for SDGs. And there are already more than 80 projects around the world, real AI, all over the place, supporting the 17 goals. So clearly, and by the way, that was also funded by Facebook, plus Microsoft, plus Google. So in that case, do we really think that ethics are? I don't think so. Ethics is. We're getting there. And remember, this is not a lack of tolerance. Tolerance, when you're right, it's just a matter of waiting for the people to change their mind, patiently. It doesn't mean they are right. It doesn't mean you agree with them. You just wait for them to change their minds about human rights, for example, about whether you should pay the same amount of money if the job is the same, female or male, there you are, whether women should be allowed to drive, and so on. They're wrong. Full stop. But we want to be patient, tolerant, wait for them to change their mind, work hard so that they can change mind peacefully, gently, but their mind has to change. So in that context, how do we move from principle to practices? A divorce, a new environment. We shape the environment around the divorce. Ethics. What kind of ethics? Ethics are. No, ethics is. Lots of principles, all pushing the same direction. Okay, fine, now we have the story, but how do we translate them into real practices? Well, we have some challenges, and here I want to summarize a few of them in umbrella way. And I know that each of them would require a university course, plenty. But today we are introducing the Institute. We're not yet doing all the work. So 5 of them, because we have 5 fingers. I thought, 5 is a good number, so to speak. So we should make AI work against wrongdoing. In this case, it's quite simple, but we are vulnerable, hugely vulnerable. We should not accept, the neoliberal view of the human beings as a hardcore, rational, well-informed, in control, autonomous agent. I don't know where they got their science fiction from. But anyone I know, myself included, malleable, weak, lazy, maybe so. You go to a restaurant, you end up by eating what the waiters suggested to you. So how many times this vulnerability has been exploited? We need to make sure, because these technologies are incredibly powerful. They're very single-minded. They are not, wrong terminology anyway, but stubborn, shall we say. They're not going to change their course. Remember that gentleman with the robots? If he steps in, they will not stop. So the vulnerability here is an important issue that we need to take care of. Are we building technologies to take care of the vulnerability, or are we ignoring it in view of some kind of science fiction? I will expand more on other topics because today is a special day, and with Crystal we have interest also in business ethics, so wait for me and more will come on other topics. But enhance human decision control. In this case, just one example among many, complexity. And now I talk again about the real complexity, not in terms of, it's so difficult and complicated. No, complexity, as in the system has so many moving parts where each of them can modify so easily, so much in such a little time that you need all the muscles you can possibly put together to maneuver, to handle, to manage that complexity. This is just an example among many others. These are a number of people living in humongous cities, not Munich, Sao Paulo in Brazil. 20, 30 million people living in the same city. Just garbage collection there. It's a nightmare. So AI for complexity, to help us handle this complexity, essential. It will be vital there to give us a hand. Responsibility. Well, here, obviously, and you don't need Greta, to be reminded. Unfortunately, unless you're Trump. But care for the environment is absolutely vital. And just think for a moment, we have a problem and a solution. We just have to make sure that we organize a party where the problem and the solution meet. It's like having 2 friends. Now they're looking for a partner, and you think, oh, they could really get together. Let me organize this little dinner. So I spoke about a divorce before between agency and intelligence. What we need now a marriage. The marriage is between the green and the blue. This is, again, a no-brainer. And it has been a no-brainer for a long time. So I don't mind if we need populist tools, Greta-like, to convince everyone, whatever it takes, so that finally this marriage happens between the green of our concerns, but also our economy, recycling, circular economy, sharing economy, and the blue of our technologies, the ability to do more with less, to be more efficient, more efficacious, or to do something that until yesterday was impossible unless you had that kind of technology behind. This marriage is, to me, and I've been preaching this, I'm afraid, for quite a while, so there's more than a bit of YouTube about this, to me, is the human project for the 21st century. It's obvious to anyone who wants to think about it. What's the next challenge? What's the next big thing that you can get people excited about and think like, oh, you want to have a war to fight for? Here it is. You don't need an enemy who is another human being elsewhere, because we are, at the moment, our worst enemy. So we need to fight for this battle right now, and maybe even with means that are less than sort of acceptable, including some populism. I really don't mind. There is no time to waste. It has to work for humanity. Now, this is another myth that I would like to stop hearing about. Jobs are going because of robots. Really? Now, just check where the robots are, where the machine learning is, where the AI is being deployed, financed, produced, and look at the number of people unemployed. Take the UK. There's virtually no unemployment. So, where is all these jobs going? The truth is that nobody knows. And all these statistics, if they were produced by your undergraduate, you would send them back and say, you have no idea. I mean, this dot is all over the place. These are all the statistics recently produced by consultancy and anyone and his uncle saying, how many jobs will disappear when? Random numbers, okay? How did they pick them up? You call your friend, 1,000 CEOs. Oh, you know how it does. That's the way it does. We pull a number of experts. Oh, please don't tell me you pull a number of experts from 100 industry producing this stuff, because it reminds me a little bit, with forgiveness to some people present, I used to be a Catholic. So, we went to Rome, we investigated, we asked 100 priests, and 99% of them believe in miracles. Ta-da! Yes, of course. What would you? Well, they should. I mean, so if you ask the right people, they will give you the right answer, the answer that you want. Meaning scaremongering. Jobs are going, disappearing, destroyed. Here is some facts, the boring stuff, the stuff you have to study for. Who does that these days? Just the last report from the American Trucking Association, 2015. They are furious, because those numbers show you that there are about 250,000 jobs not being filled in terms of truck drivers in America these days. Why? Oh, because autonomous vehicles, my uncle. The driver doesn't simply drive from A to B, opens the gate, maybe, checks that the eggs are okay, fills the form, takes responsibility for filling the thing. If all of a sudden someone forgot, the truck driver does many more things. The problem with jobs going is that we confuse between one skill being replaced, a job being 10 skills replaced, end of the job. It doesn't work that way. A job is not 2 or 3 skills. It's a whole more complex business, and therefore jobs are not going, as they are not going here. So what is really happening? This is more recent stuff from Lloyd Bank. You've got plenty of examples here. Lloyd Bank says, we just sent home about 6,000 people plus, and we're going to hire at the same time 8,000 people plus. So then you swing to the other side. That's the California view. Oh, fantastic. This is going to be beautiful, rosy future, from good to better. No, of course not. Because the people hired are not the same. The 6,000 plus sent home are the people my age who are non-trainable, irrelevant, skills totally useless. They're going to be sent home, and they're hiring 8,000 plus people who have the right skills, the right ability, the right intelligence, etc. So we do have a massive problem, but it's not the problem of jobs disappearing. It's the problem of how we navigate between now and then. Remember, the generation who has to have the moment of transition between one bank and the other in the river, and there's a generation, current one, which will pay all the cost of this transition. It will be the generation that will be burned by AI. It's too quick to be absorbed gently, and therefore society will have to make an effort. We will have to spread the benefits future a little bit backwards, as it were, to the present. If all this advantage will be coming and is coming, well, let's make sure that maybe it's called taxation, maybe it's called retraining. A lot of things are happening now so that there's a more even wave of unemployment, impact, society, so on. Welfare, that's what it's called. But don't tell me that jobs are disappearing full stop, because that is quite rubbish. This is what happens when Sainsburys try to replace completely their own shop, all human beings, with automatic tills, automatic this, checking, monitoring, so on. It was, if you can see, just a few months ago, it was April, and essentially a few months later, they put back everything else. Why? Because we don't like it. How much do I enjoy scanning those bins? I would rather have someone scanning those bins for me if I can. And so they were queuing at the only place where there was someone helping people. So let's be careful about hype, about the ideas of 1, 2, 3, infinite. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and 6. Okay, so calm down. Let's have a look at the practicalities and what the problems are. It should make us more human. That's the last bit. Here I would like to talk about autonomy, because if you are a philosopher, autonomy being used in this context sounds really odd. I mean, we've been defining ourselves as autonomous agents, at least since Kant onwards. It was the Enlightenment that started looking at our exceptionalism. We always put ourselves at the center of something. And if we are at the center of something, well, surely at least decision-making should have a real role. The example I want to provide is very specific and in honor of Christoph, chair. And so I will talk a little bit about business, but you can understand autonomy in many, many other contexts. In business, this is what's happening. I mean, FinTech is growing at a staggering level in terms of investments, in terms of people involved, in terms of financial products. So that staggering global FinTech investment, and we're talking about the usual numbers that only business people and military can read, not philosophers. After a few zeros, I get lost. It's built on something that is way more fragile than the technology. It's built a lot on trust. Those numbers there are some of the most recent number I could find in terms of the value of the top companies in the world, the S&P 500, Facebook included. If you read that statistics, it tells you that virtually all the value of a company is intangible. 80, 85%. That's Apple, that's Google, that's Microsoft, that's Facebook, and on and on. Meaning, reputation, goodwill, technically speaking, that's what it's called, of the people involved and your clients. Your know-how, whatever you have in terms of copyright and intelligence in your company. Your workforce, retaining it, and so on. That's all soft. Now, this requires, therefore, a lot of ethical thinking. So, putting together, number 5, autonomy in FinTech, ethical thinking in terms of make sure that companies are doing the right thing, and then you start thinking, okay, well, what is the role here in all this? What are we talking about? Well, financial services really have 2 functions, and I'm oversimplifying. They transform money into a commodity, which is a great thing. If you don't have money as a commodity, you still go around with whales to exchange whales for chickens. That's from Gulliver. He's traveling in a place where they didn't have money, but all they could do was transport stuff so they could get other stuff. And if you want to have 2 chairs, I have to give you a whole table. Now I can pay for it. So money to commodity and risk into cost. The top one is banking, the bottom one is insurance. That's oversimplifying for a philosopher, okay? But if you can transform risk into a cost, your house burning, or money into a commodity, I can pay for the table, I don't have to bring 2 chairs. Well, then this is built on a technology these days that transforms all this into more choice. Imagine, money into a commodity, therefore I have more freedom. I can exchange those 2 chairs, now that they are, not say, 20 euros, into a lot of other stuff, and I can have more certainty, more security. All this is based on trust. Now, how do we put all these things together? Because all this, as you can tell, in the middle, is hugely affected. And by the way, when we presented this, I sent it to Christoph before this week cover of The Economist. So that's how popular this stuff is these days. Well, how can we take all this package? Remember, we're stepping up challenges, autonomy in what context? Well, take FinTech affected by AI, in what way, all these values. Well, we need to put all these things together. And so I could not present this like 10 minutes ago, but I hope that now the little map will make sense. We should have A, remember all those ethical principles for AI, guide effectively and efficiently B, this is a particular example I brought to you, but there are many others, the FinTech and those values, so that C, remember that map we saw a moment ago? The red stuff has a positive impact and only the red stuff gets away, only the amber gets away. The green stuff has a positive impact on the values of FinTech and the soft or intangible values of companies. So we just drill a little bit just to give you a sense of how complicated things get. We can now resurface and get out because all this requires governance. You do all I've said, all these 5 challenges, the divorce, the re-engineering, the changing of the world according to AI, the transformation of these sort of challenges into opportunities, and with a little example, if you have good governance requires ethics. And you hear a lot about ethics. We're coming to a conclusion, so don't worry, just stay with me for another 5 minutes. You hear a lot about ethics these days, and it's, for a philosopher, very, very reassuring, very pleasant. I grew up at a time where there was the sort of normal discourse was about the 2 cultures, the hardcore quantitative engineering, hard sciences, and then of course the soft, the qualitative, the humanities. I always thought it was rubbish. Of course it was rubbish. I mean, it was rubbish momentarily. I mean, it's just due to the fact that people don't study enough philosophy, don't have the centrist perspective. They have the this week, next week perspective. And of course, this week or next week, all of a sudden, oh my God, there's a divide. We will never be. Really, just calm down once again. Keep calm and study more. If you study more, you know that it goes up and down and up and down. And so in this case, in particular, AI, but also the digital technologies, have put together the humanities, the social sciences, the hard sciences, the most quantitative and the most qualitative in a single institute. Surprising? Yes and no. Surprising if you come from the 2 cultures, oh my goodness, never again. So totally okay if you have studied some German philosophy of the good kind. Yeah, of course, they've always been together. It was a glitch that they weren't talking to each other. Now they're back where they should be. In this context, ethics becomes the normal kind of common ground. Everybody wants to do the right thing. We just don't know exactly how and exactly what. So soft ethics is a terminology that I introduced recently because of pressure from politicians and business people. You get to a meeting in, say, London or in Brussels or in Berlin, I have to say as well, and they ask you, look, why law is not enough? We got regulations. Okay, ethics, I know, I need to speak about ethics with a journalist, but really, Professor Floridi, you can tell me this is all rubbish anyway, and I say, nobody believes in ethics. And you say, no, wait. This is important. The ethics we're talking about here is not the ethics of grandma that tells you don't steal, don't kill, don't lie. Of course, there's that. It's full of don'ts, and that's fine. But the ethics we're talking about here is what I call soft ethics, not the hard ethics, because it's post-compliance, first constraint on one side. First, say, Facebook is here. So, dear Facebook, we are in Europe. First of all, you do compliance. Yes, of course. The question is, what else more and extra can you do? Or maybe I can give 7.5 million to establish an institute. Well, that's not required. That's not compliance. That's a good move. That's a nice move. No, you may be skeptical and cynical, but don't tell me that as what required by the law, because it isn't. And then you have human rights on the other side. I said, and of course, the ethics that we want to have is absolutely post-human rights, as in, you will respect all the human rights. Is there space there left? Well, that's the open space of ethics. There's plenty of grey area left by the legislation, by what we do. Particular clear example, GDPR. Part of the GDPR, and we are the group that has proved, that has left as a grey area, the right to an explanation when a decision is taken about you, a single individual, solely by an algorithm. Grey area. Which way do we go? Well, I think the grey area was left there on purpose, contrary to my colleagues who participated with me in the research. They think it's a problem. I think it's an opportunity. I think it was meant to be a grey area, if you look at the history of the document, so that the decision could be taken more flexibly, depending by sectors, by time, by technology. And so it was a way of saying, look, we think it's a good idea, but let's not constrain innovation, as we heard before, so much that it will kill it. Let's kind of raise a red flag without shooting first and then ask questions. So, grey area. Empty area. I heard from Ugo that we are making progress with legislation about drones, but that until recently and for a little time, it will be an empty area where a lot of ethical thinking can do a lot of good when you have no particular regulations in place. And you have areas that needs to be filled even when legislation has happened. So soft ethics does a lot of work, let alone hard ethics. Hard ethics is what contributes to shaping the law. And sometimes is what has to change the law. Because to the lawyer in the room, in the government building, in Berlin, in Paris, in London, in Brussels, you had to tell them sometimes the law is utterly wrong. We Europeans know by experience how wrong the law can be. My dad is 84, and he remembers, tanks in Rome. There were no Italian tanks. American tanks, German tanks. Sometimes the law, back in Italy as well, is the wrong kind. You need a hard ethics to oppose the law and change it. So hard ethics to change and improve the law and set the direction. Soft ethics to make sure that once the law is in place, compliance does a good job, but there's a grey, empty and fillable areas that require plenty of work. Essentially, it's quite simple. Ethics does 4 things, and people normally forget at least 3 of them. It's a signal saying, look, world, I want to do the right thing. I might be wrong, but I really mean it. 2, collaboration. You and I need a common language. What's your language? This. That's why we need, for example, the OECD. And we have companies, as we speak, I can't mention the company, NDA and so on, but companies from Japan, one in particular, come to Europe and say, what's the common language? What kind of ethical language do you speak, you guys here? Oh, this, okay, we can do this. Business to business requires, as a minimal starting point, a clear understanding of what trust looks like, what reliability, and so on. Then awareness within your company. This is public knowledge, so EY developed a particular app within their company, Ernst & Young was called in the past, to build awareness, not to solve problems, not to signal, not to collaborate, but to make sure that they working for us was aware that sometimes you have to think twice before, solution, boom, boom, boom. And then finally solving problems, because some problems have to be solved. And here I might mention, say, another problem solved by Facebook. Sorry to put Facebook today, but no, it's the founding collaborator of the Institute. And some time ago, they did something that I thought was absolutely fantastic. They built a so-called compassionate unit. And a compassionate unit in the United States made sure that people who are at risk of suicide get a little note on their page, private. No one else hears it, only them. It's very gentle and says, Luciano, we think you're not quite okay. Have you considered calling this particular service? Now, if that saves one life, one, was it worth having? I think so. Questionable, privacy and all the rest. But surely, we must all agree that it was not required by the law. There was no compliance here. It was going out of your way. So what's the real thing here? Football, Italian, Germany, inevitable. The difference between the law and the ethics of a particular field is the following. Law provides the rule of the game. If you don't play according to the rules of the games, you're not part of our team. But winning, that's not playing according to the rules only. Otherwise, I would be a master in chess playing. I would be the best player in tennis and so on. I wish that playing according to the rules were sufficient to win. It isn't. So ethics is a winning strategy once you have done all the good work in terms of legal requirements, legal compliance. Play according to the rules, absolutely. How do I win? That's the ethical business. So ethics, and I come to the end, has really this twofold force. And that's why I'm so, honestly, quite excited about the Institute. It's like seeing your home team, really getting on top of the league, so to speak. It has a twofold force. It's a risk management, because maybe sometimes Cambridge Analytica could have been avoided. Inevitable reference. But it's also an opportunity strategy. Remember what I said? The amber problem, the opportunity cost. If you don't have an ethical framework, the most conservative, better safe than sorry will always play the major role. We would still be in a cave if we had played the better safe than sorry, because that fire there, that burns. I don't think that's a good idea. Let's turn it off immediately. Switch it. I like my steak of mammoth cold. Okay, that was a bad idea. So I think that playing with fire is part of the business. We can do that properly. So to do that, we can do some digital ethics impact assessment. We can look at the feasible, and that's why I remind you, feasible. I'll come back in 5 years to show you that there's no such thing as general AI. Don't believe people who try to distract you with problems that are non-existent to make sure that the real problems are not being taken care of. It's like being worried about zombies. Yeah, surely. Meanwhile, we are destroying this planet. I have other priorities. As we speak today, 700 million people did not have drinkable water this morning while having my cappuccino. And I'm really worried about general AI. Surely. Zombie. Absolutely. 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. Anytime. Seriously. That is irresponsible. It's no longer funny, okay? It used to be funny. And it's a joke I don't laugh at anymore. Feasible. Real science. Sustainable. Do we really have to repeat this? Or by the way, sustainable is barely acceptable. Next time you hear someone talking about sustainable, remember when you go to the dentist, and the dentist will tell you, don't worry, Luciano, the pain will be totally sustainable. Can we do better than sustainable? So sustainable is just about meaning that I will not cry my voice out. I will not run away. That's sustainable. I mean, what we are putting there is a very, very low bar, okay? Sustainability is not a golden, it's barely manageable. It means that the earth will not die. You will not scream your head off at the dentist. Sustainability. We can do much better than that. Acceptable socially. That's the bare minimum again. Okay, people will not have a backlash against that. They will not walk away, will not stop buying that product, not using their service. But the real thing is preferable, socially preferable. And the test here is quite simple. You have it, you don't have it, you buy it again. I lose this watch, I'm buying it tomorrow. I love it. I miss that thing, not therefore preferable as in I like it, but I like it again. Think about it. How many things you have that you wouldn't buy again, you wouldn't use again, you wish, or if they disappear. If we as society produce an AI that we want again, then we are on the right track. So what should we do? And that's the last slide, promise, final. I think we should think much more deeply. That's bad English, by the way, but it sounds better on the slide. We should think more deeply, way more deeply. That's why the Institute is important. And that's why I have to say, forgive me, but as a philosopher, no. You are either Greek or German, and that's why the deep thinking could not happen if not in a German institution. I know it's trivial, I know you heard this 1,000 times, but trust me, it comes from a philosopher. So deep thinking, if it has to happen somewhere, it will be German deep thinking, please. And the second thing, be mindful. And I didn't say careful, mindful. Mindful about the consequences, think twice about the externalities, all the counter effects, but then don't stop necessarily. No, the careful is the one that never crosses the road. The mindful is the one that checks, looks, waits for and finally cross the road. We need to cross this road. I don't want to hear the other people, the California people, who are at the same time totally pessimistic and totally optimistic. I don't know what they drink there. And they say, it's going to be a total disaster. It's going to be totally marvelous. Just check. Be mindful. And we need to care more about everything. I know we speak a lot about human-centric, and it's almost too tempting to avoid. But you know that we have destroyed this planet by being human-centric, by being all about us. Me, because I'm worth it, because it's all about humanity. With the loss in some corners of religion, and I speak as an agnostic, we have lost a very deep sense of the other, of a more important other. Now we should regain it, whether historically, religiously, or agnostically, I don't mind. But I sense that we are here for everybody, past generations, future generations, the current, and the whole planet. So when we speak about human-centric, can we make it, please, caring 360 degrees, not just about my next movie on Netflix? That's a lot of, no, human-centric, but not the kind that we want. And we need to design way infinitely better. You pick up a textbook in philosophy, and I would like to invite you to pick up all the words, the keywords that are not there. And design is one of them. Often policy or governance is not there. And yet that is exactly what makes the world work. Designing the technologies that we want, AI, and the governance of the technologies that we want, as for example, Google and the AI for People group is doing, and many others, that is the future. So we have opportunities and problems. We need to design the right solutions. And the best way to do that is to start thinking that digital innovation is not necessarily the most pressing thing. It's the governance of the digital that will make a difference. So the Institute, to me, not that I want to pile up too many expectations, but is an amazing step forward in the opportunity that we have to do this properly. And Oxford is an old lady. We always walk slowly and we get there. Just wait for us. We'll establish this institute. We will get there. So please, just do a good job. We'll just copy the blueprint. It's a German blueprint. We love it. Thank you.